Okay, so welcome everyone from all over. We have people in North America, South America, people from Europe even. So I will just introduce myself. I'm Lynn Koll, and I met Louis about 11 years ago. Actually, it was the year 2009. And we met out in Minneapolis. We met at a workshop, and then we connected about I was just intrigued on all the classes and the books. He's written several books, and I started to just help be an administrator and facilitator to help get some of his classes going here in Minnesota. So he taught classes here, and we launched our first series of workshops on 9/09/09, which I guess is tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 9th of September, so this is kind of like our 11-year anniversary of knowing each other. Then Louis has moved away, and this is kind of our reunion time now to reconnect, as we got together on Zoom a month ago and decided we would share some things because we're in a different world now. And all those teachings that I heard from him so long ago was really eye-opening and gave me a whole new perspective on the world. And now in these times, I see how much of it has really been applicable. And so he will help us bring some of those teachings that he brought into the times that we're in. So we'll be having this for the next 4 weeks. So join when you can, and I'll record when I am able as well. See, I got letting a few more people in. So Louis,
Then you cannot see me now, correct?
Correct.
My camera's not working.
I hear you, but your picture fell off. So you're the one under Dell and Spyron. So go down to your video in the corner and see where if it says add video.
I'm trying to do that, but my camera's not allowing me to do that.
Oh, yes.
Here it is. Is that working now for you? No.
Nope,
I can
not
see
yet.
myself on the camera.
Yeah.
Well, that's strange. I wonder why that would be. Should I leave and then come back in?
You could try to do that and see, because you were just here before. So go ahead and.
Yeah, as I click.
Yeah. Oh, you know, the joys of Zoom and technology. We're learning as we go. So welcome, welcome. There's more are coming on in. All right, so Louis left, so he can try to come back in. And okay, here I go. I'll admit him, because we have to see Louis's face, for heaven's sakes. Oh, there we go. Now unmute yourself, Louis. And then unmute yourself and we can see you. Perfect.
Okay, yep.
Yep, so go ahead, and want you introduce yourself and what you're all about and your intention for us today.
Great. Well, my name is Louis Bourgeois, and I'm from North America and spent the last 25 years of my life in North America living in Minnesota, but I've been down here now in Cuenca 7 years. And my lifelong dream was to have a eco resort kind of place that I'm establishing, and an intentional community, which is slowly growing. Things got slowed down, obviously, because of the COVID crisis. But yeah, there's been a lot of interest in people living here, either part-time or full-time, and people that are interested in conscious living. So that's what we'll be talking about today, is the conscious living philosophy that I've integrated over my lifetime. And we'll talk about all the different sources today, and the sort of the history of the growth of what I see as this conscious living spirituality since the middle 1960s. So Happy to be here. I can't see everybody. Some people are frozen, but who's here from Cuenca? Anybody? Show of hands. Anybody living in Cuenca, Ecuador? No. Okay.
I was getting ready to move down. I don't know if you can hear me, but COVID stopped
I can
it.
hear you. Yeah.
COVID stopped
Okay.
it. Yeah. And I had
Great.
two friends.
Well,
I had two friends that went before me, which were the driving factor in me wanting to move to Cuenca. And they moved to Cuenca. And when COVID hit, they couldn't get out of there fast enough. They were afraid. So I was hoping this might come up in some aspect of this conversation of martial law, you know, and they came back to the States. And I've never really given up my Cuenca dream. It's like, they did. They were terrified of Cuenca for their own reasons, with whatever those are.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, for all that it's worth, I think things have been probably more normal here in Cuenca than probably most any place on earth. And they're certainly normal now. Everything's going back to total open at the 12th of September. So there's no problems with the military, the government, or whatever.
No.
Everything here is very normal, calm, and safe and peaceful.
You feel safe. Okay. Okay.
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. Obviously I haven't given up on the dream.
Good.
Because I'm here.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you go on, if you become friends on Facebook with Louis, you can see some of the photos of his land and his place he has building there with his community building. So pretty impressive.
And I lived in Minnesota for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of interesting that, yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
Okay, Lynn, well, I'm checked in.
Okay, great. I think we'll have you do some of your teaching and then we'll open it up to some sharing. But why don't we just start with a little grounding, get us present, and just do a short meditation to open ourselves up. So let's just take some deep breaths together. Just get yourself mindful of being in your body. Just feel yourself relaxing from your head on down your face, down your arms, down your chest, your stomach. Keep breathing in that light down your legs to your feet. Feel your feet firmly planted on the ground, rooting into Mother Earth. Feeling those earth energies, feeling those heavenly energies from above, bringing down the heavenly energies above and the earth energies from below, mingling into your heart, feeling the expansion in your heart. Just feel yourself fully present in this moment. If you feel a thought come in, just let it drift by like a cloud. And just prepare your mind to be open to new perspectives, to be an open vessel, and to possibly look at things in a new and different way. Clear out all programs from years of what you might believe to be true, and just allow yourself to go, this is interesting. So just allow your mind to be open and your heart to expand. Also know that you are in charge. You have the discernment to take in what resonates with you and be discerning for what is your truth. We give gratitude to Louis for his years of walking the path, walking the talk, and truly living his teachings. And we open to learn all that we can. Another deep breath, and you can come back into this space. And I will mute myself and turn it on over to Louis.
Thank you, Lynn. So it's fascinating to me that the history that I discuss begins with a piece of technology which has evolved into this new technology, Zoom, that simply because of the COVID global crisis. I mean, we're going to see, and I'll go get a lot more into this later today in the talk, but how events that might appear to be difficult or negative or taking steps backwards, as far as evolution is concerned, nothing's not working for the higher good of evolution. So I would say nothing's not working for the higher good of us as a species as we evolve. So here we are with Zoom technology. In 1967, the summer of 1967, nicknamed the Summer of Love, the BBC in England decided we wanted to do this event called One World and use the new technology of satellite communication to broadcast this program to the world. And as it turned out, about 400 million people were able to watch on television this broadcast. And because, of course, they're a British organization, they were going to basically feature entertainment from all over the world, all these different countries that would participate. And of course, they wanted to feature their very famous, the Beatles, as the sort of the premier presentation. And they asked the Beatles to write a particularly special song for this event, and they came up with the song, All You Need Is Love. So for me, that marked a significant point in our evolution, that, the 1960s was a very turbulent decade, much like this decade is turning out to be. A decade of great transformation. And we're seeing now, almost 60 years later, some of the events of the 1960s now translated into, if you look at like the civil rights movement, for example, and now all the riots or the Black Lives Matter and all that, it would seem like, boy, haven't we taken a big step backwards in our development as a culture, and of course the North American culture is just part of a global culture, and racism obviously is part of culture, part of our existence as a human species. And what I'd like to offer right from the beginning is that the appearance of something going bad or going backwards isn't accurate at all. In fact, Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now, he would talk about the actual idea of evil being simply something that we don't fully understand, that we're not fully able to understand, integrate, welcome. And this is, again, part of what we'll talk about in a later class about the processes of forgiveness, and that comes out of my training with the Course in Miracles, that it in fact is a total reversal of the way that we would think, at least as egoic creatures. So what I'm going to talk about after, just this idea of, the Beatles introducing this idea, all you need is love, that love would in fact be the moving force of our evolution into the third phase of our development as a species, that well, I wanted to mention before jumping forward to Carolyn Mace, I wanted to mention just an event that happened that was very instrumental in my life. And right around the time, of course, the Summer of Love was happening, A Course in Miracles was being dictated to Helen Schuckman. That took a process of 7 years from 1965 to 1972. The book was published in 1976. And I began my 25 years of devotion to that teaching in 1986. Again, so I'll make a lot of references to A Course in Miracles. And so if people don't have that much familiarity with it, please feel free to ask questions, because I'm very good at putting the language of A Course in Miracles into very simple, direct language. I've worked really hard in my life to translate everything that I've integrated, spirituality from all different parts of the world, all different ages, and certainly our modern with physics and science and all of these different things into what I would call an energy language. And we'll get into that more when we talk about David Hawkins and power versus force. But Carolyn Mace, she was the first one in my life, in I think it was 2006. Someone introduced me to her book, Sacred Anatomy, and I actually received the book as a gift in a cassette tape series. So I was listening to this as I traveled a lot in 2006, the beginning of sort of my big transformation, the beginning of my leaving Minnesota, leaving my business, my marriage, my life as I knew it. And so here Carolyn Mace, her teaching on audio of Sacred Anatomy, it was revolutionary for me. It impressed me so much, her authority, her clarity, her simplicity, and how she talked about the energy body, but more about the energy body as our vehicle for transformation into the third level of consciousness as a species. And she described in a talk, actually wasn't in the book Sacred Anatomy, but in a talk she gave, it was on a CD, called The Three Levels of Power and How to Use Them. And so anyway, she described these three levels of consciousness as tribal mind, the egoic mind, and the spiritual mind. And the tribal mind has been our development as a species for millions of years, developing from Homo erectus into Homo sapiens. And the egoic mind has been much more recent, really just the past few hundred years, that we have developed as a species with our intelligence and with books and education and technology. We've developed this idea of being more than just a body, but being a person, and particularly in Western cultures, North America and Europe, really the ego and the personal development really became kind of keenly important, especially in these past 50 or 60 years. I mean, that was a big part of my life growing up, born in 1952, and realizing by the time that I was a teenager, this idea that, be all you can be was pretty much the significant shift. Whereas, I live in a tribal culture here in South America. These people are tribal. Most of them do not have any concept of be all you can be, or what's in it for me, or how can I develop myself as a person independent from my biological clan or independent from the church. They don't think that way. I'm married to a local woman. I know very well what this tribal mind is, and the beauty of it, the simplicity of it, but also the limitations of it. And so part of my journey to South America had to do with a prophecy that describes the eagle and the condor, the eagle being representation of North America and the condor representation of Andean South America. And the prophecy states, when the eagle flies with a condor, it will be the birth of a new earth. And literally, I've seen that prophecy come true. Literally, I have a 5-year-old daughter who's a product of a pretty evolved North American and a very stable, family-oriented tribal woman, my wife Kati. And our daughter is, she will be, to me, this idea of integration. There's only maybe so much that we as North Americans can do to change ourselves to evolve beyond the egoic mind, which, there's some severe limitations of it. And this is a big part, again, of why I moved away from North America, because the egoic culture of North America isn't doing so well, in the sense that that's what's going into this cocooning process. That's what's going to be transformed as we birth the spiritual mind. The suffering that we see in North America and other developed nations, the suffering is simply the egoic mind being transformed. Because the tribal mind can easily make the shift into a new earth. Egoic mind cannot, because we'll talk, much more about this in as we go down the road in these 4 parts. But a new earth is really predicated on the idea that what's in it for me is not the best thing for the globe. In fact, what's in it for me is what's hurt the globe so much. And so we now are being asked to step into a level of consciousness, the spiritual mind, that puts the globe first, that puts all of humanity first. And so, this would be totally in line with evolution, that those who are hurting the planet, those that are not able to make the transition in the evolutionary shift that's happening right now. I mean, we're in this, like I say, a cocooning process where into the caterpillar consciousness, this is not a good thing. It seems like death. It seems like destruction. And so the egoic mind, the caterpillar is the egoic mind, is suffering now. There's a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred, a lot of things being expressed that I'm sure many people in North America especially are shocked. They never would have expected to see so much dark energy coming to the surface. But I would say again that this is exactly what's necessary for the transformation to happen. Things rise, the darkness rises into the light, and the light, of course, is so much stronger than the dark. Love is so much stronger than hate. But the hate has to come into the light. And this is, again, for those who are familiar with the Course in Miracles, the Course in Miracles talks about the essence of this transformation is to see special hatred for what it is, and then allowing the hatred to be transformed into love. So what we're seeing in North America now is a lot of special hatred coming to the surface. It's been there all along, but it's been hidden, behind special love, like, oh, we get along, we're so nice to each other, we love our country, everybody does their thing, right, as a culture, to pretend all this darkness doesn't exist, but it always existed. Now we just see it more clearly, but it's not we're seeing it like things are getting worse. We're seeing it because we're ready to let it go. We're ready to say, it's time to shift. And so, again, my personal prediction is that we've got about a 10-year period that we're in now, maybe 12 years. And by the early 2030s, we will see a remarkable transformation of this whole planet. And to me, I've seen it in my mind. My personal destiny has always been about this. I've always seen it clearly, what's going to happen. That's why these things that people say, boy, I'm so surprised by the events happening in the world today. This does not surprise me at all. It's kind of like when 2012 happened. Lynn and I, we had this process from 2009 to 2012, essentially. And it was getting ready for this shift, right? The Mayan calendar, the shift, everything would come to a stop and then start again in the new era. And so many people that I ran into said, well, boy, that was kind of a bust. Nothing really happened. Well, yes, of course it happened. You just didn't see it. You weren't tuned into it yet. You weren't aware of what was really happening under the current, because obviously evolution does not always work like in the way that we would think it would work. And so it's working now in this global crisis, which again, what I'm saying, this cocooning process. I mean, nothing could have been more perfect. You couldn't have imagined a way in which we would walk around looking like we're all in these little cocoons. Everybody's like wearing a mask. Everybody has to stay home. Everybody has to socially distance. And it's like, nobody could have orchestrated a more perfect symbolic representation of our transformation into, what's coming. I mean, it's already here. It's already here now. I mean, I'm living in a new earth now. So it's not like it's coming in 2025 or coming in 2032. It already exists. And I'm sure there's several thousand people around the world. Carolyn Mace would call them the points of light. There's probably several thousand, maybe tens of thousands of people that are already living in a new earth now. And the evidence of this new earth now is that they're not angry, they're not afraid, they're not complaining, they're not upset, they're not whatever. You know what? They're excited. Like this, Eckhart Tolle described a new earth as a level of consciousness that begins with acceptance, but easily shifts into appreciation and can easily then shift into enthusiasm. So imagine for this COVID crisis, someone like myself, I could go way back. Actually, I decided a month before the lockdown happened here, you know what? I love my paradise so much. I'm never going to leave. I never want to leave. I'm happy just to be here, to do nothing but cocoon, get into my writing, get back into my teaching, whatever. Like there's no reason that my inability to travel or even leave this property would affect me at all. Now that would be evidence again of someone who's far enough into this new earth where it's like, yeah, I can easily make the shift. I can easily make the transition. This isn't going to bother me. This isn't going to hurt me. The only part of our mind that thinks this could hurt me is that egoic mind that goes, hey, wait a minute. This is infringing on my personal happiness, my personal rights, my personal freedom, my personal whatever. Not seeing the big picture like, this is an amazing opportunity. This is an amazing occurrence. So I've jumped quite a bit ahead, but I wanted to introduce, after talking about Carolyn Mason, the 3 levels, I wanted to introduce Dr. David Hawkins. Maybe some of you are familiar with him. He passed a number of years ago, but he wrote one of the more amazing books I've ever read called Power versus Force, published in 1998, a couple of years after Carolyn Mace's Anatomy of the Spirit, or Sacred Anatomy. And in Power versus Force, I mean, David Hawkins is, as many brilliant people are, was a little bit eccentric, maybe a little bit egomaniacal, only because he sort of allowed well, how do I say it? He was sort of a victim of his own brilliance in the sense that he did this thing where he used muscle testing, kinesiology, to calibrate truth. And so he developed this system and he wrote about it. And that was basically the essence of Power versus Force, where he kind of described, I'll just kind of put this on the camera for a minute, just so you can see maybe some of you are familiar with this, and we'll talk about it more in detail in the future. Because this really kind of breaks down, the essence of what's the people that live in a tribal consciousness, what are they occupied with? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. The lowest level on his chart, which is energy levels, is 20 out of 1,000. And he would say that the emotional attachment to that is shame, and sort of the psychological manifestation of it is humiliation. Well, in this culture, I mean, I've been finding it very fascinating that how people teach their children, for example. They teach children here primarily via shame. Like you would be ashamed of yourself because the Catholic Church says you should do this, or you should be ashamed of yourself because they're simple people, poor people. And like Kati's mother will say to her, she's now 43 years old, but when I first knew her, 37, she would say to her, "You can't leave the house dressed like that. Like what are you thinking? How?" It just kind of boggled my mind that Kati's mother could easily manipulate her with shame. Like no good person would ever wear those jeans with a hole in them, or sneakers, or whatever. It just kind of boggled my mind, because again, in my life, I've gone so far beyond the ability to be shamed. Like someone's going to manipulate me with shame. It just doesn't work. And I'm sure most of you have developed in your lives where that would have no bearing. You would have, you could care less what people thought about what clothes you're wearing or whatever. so it's just, fascinating to me to be able to understand, because none of this really would have made sense to me, the lower levels. But like pretty much the way Hawkins would describe the earth, okay, mankind, he would put the basic calibration of mankind at the level of 200. That's just a step above pride and anger. It's just a step above. So like, sort of like the best vibrational reality for the general mankind is just a step above anger and pride. He calls it courage. So it's like the possibility that things could get better, the possibility that we could evolve into something greater. And he puts the calibration for the culture of USA at 400, which is it's a high point of the egoic mind, which is just called reason and understanding that the ego is a reasoning mechanism, and it's always judging things with reason. Like there's good and there's bad. This is clearly good. This is clearly bad. And so you see right now in the egoic culture of North America that there's this rampant excess of judgment, that there's clear divisions. This is clearly wrong. This is clearly right. This is clearly bad. This is clearly good. This is clearly, black and white. It's just this, it's kind of like a perfect, again, the metaphor, even like with the racial Black Lives Matter thing, it's a perfect metaphor of how ridiculous a world based purely on reason, on logic, on understanding is. Because what Hawkins would describe with great delight is this spiritual mind. He didn't call it the spiritual mind, but these levels above 400, which get into the appreciation of Eckhart Tolle, joy, awe, awakening, enlightenment, singularity, self-realization. See, he delineates these levels of our beingness, and there's many examples of beings or evidence of the beings. Like David Hawkins is so cute because of course his writing, like my writing, anybody when they're in their highest state of creativity, the vibrational reality of that expression is so pure, it's so powerful to that individual, because it's like the best they can do. So he calibrated the Bible at like 450, A Course in Miracles at 560. He calibrated his books at 990, 985, 995, like pure consciousness, because for him that was pure. And so this is again part of what I got so excited about Eckhart Tolle when his book, After Power versus Force. Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now came out in 1999. When I read that book, I was like amazed at certain little aspects of it. But the main aspect was the way he described our energetic function, that our energetic function was to be this portal through which the highest level of creativity might express itself into the space-time world. Because that's what I'd been studying for all of these years with A Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles just in this gobbledygook language of Jesus and Christianity and all this kind of stuff. But Jesus was actually saying exactly the same thing. Your function, which is your happiness, is to be this conduit through which God would manifest. Eckhart Tolle just put it in a different language. He actually described God, named God as the unmanifested. That was brilliant. Here's this energetic principle, the unmanifested, that needs you in order to manifest.
Louis, I actually have our bookmark right here that we made for OASIS Center for Conscious Living. And the quote that is on here is what you had about conscious living. And it says, conscious living is to know one's purpose as the channel through which the creative, energetic principle of the universe, God or spirit, manifests. So I carry this around with me all the time just to remind me of this unmanifested creative energy that wants to express through me as me, and trying to get through all of those barriers. Another thing I wanted to say with the power versus force, when you talk about the levels and at the very bottom being shame, I mean, if you look at what's going on in the world right now with what is happening is that the shame is at a very prominent part right now. If you're not wearing a mask, if you're not helping others, if you're not complying to the rules, it's very easily using shame, and they're encouraging people to be tattletales and, you know, to shame others, or even to shame whatever your views are politically or economically, whatever, you know, just to use that kind of belittling. So it's a very powerful psychological behavioral operation to be able to use that level in that scale. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that when you see the simplicity of this statement that came through in A Course in Miracles, that came through in Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, that it for me, it redefines everything. It redefined like why I would be so driven to do what I do, because we need a reason. We need permission, let's say, to be great. And this understanding gives us the permission, because we can't become egoic monsters. Wow, it's amazing. Look at me. And, you know, because you think about so many of the spiritual teachers during this era, you know, many of them got destroyed by their misunderstanding, and the people around them having a basic misunderstanding of this principle. You know, they made the individual special. They saw the individual as having these amazing powers. You know, again, the egoic mind interpreting greatness, whereas the spiritual mind interpreting greatness is like, just like Jesus said, "Of myself, I am nothing. Of the Father, He doeth the works." You know, that's a Christian way of describing this exact same thing. There's nothing about me that makes me special. And the thing that, like Eckhart said, you know, about enthusiasm, the enthusiasm that you see in me or anyone that's in this vibratory reality is simply the energy itself, right? Enthusiasm means God, that God is within you. That this energy, as it manifests through the human form, is going to look like enthusiasm. It's going to look, it's just going to be a high vibration. Again, that, you know, David Hawkins put enthusiasm way above joy, way above unconditional love. It's like, and so I remember, you know, reading that a long time ago, that makes so much sense to me, that enthusiasm is this infectious energy that you can't argue about. I mean, love, people can debate love. What kind of love? This love how you love your dog, how you love your child, how you love a parent, how romantic love. I mean, love is quite problematic, right? A Course in Miracles talked about special love being a cover for special hatred, that according to A Course in Miracles, all romantic love is hatred in disguise, right? Self-hatred, because you're denying your wholeness, you're denying your completeness, you're denying your divinity, and then finding someone else to project that onto. Oh, and this again is a problem of the world, that the world has to eat this whole process of projection. Because remember what the ego does, talking about the egoic mind, it denies and projects. So it's denied its divinity and then projected it onto some distant God. It's denied its evil and then projected it onto all these other people that are not like me. So we're in the process now where people are going to have to eat all of this denial, eat all of this projection, and go, wow, you know, it'll just humble. Those that survive will just be humbled, and then they'll be transformed. It's like, wow, that was the simple mistake I made. Remember the from A Course in Miracles, Marianne Williamson was one of the great translators of the material of A Course in Miracles into a, you know, language people could understand. And her book, what was Marianne Williamson's book in the 1990s? Somebody knows? Anybody? Marianne Williamson. Unmute yourself to. It's anyway. In that book, Mary, yes, A Return to Love. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, in that book, Return to Love, Marianne has a great quote that's been quoted often that says, you know, you're not afraid of your littleness. What you're afraid of is your greatness or your magnificence. That's what scares you to death. And so you're going to hide it and play this endless game of hide and seek, right? So people seeking teachers, seeking workshops, seeking whatever, seeking. The idea is that the divinity, the radiance, the truth, the beauty, the love has been denied and projected outside of yourself, and then you play hide and seek trying to find it again. So this is again where teachers in the past confused their students because they were confused because they didn't see the simplicity of reality, the simplicity. You know, again, I mentioned in Hawkins' hierarchy, he brings in singularity at level 900. Singularity being sort of the highest level of awareness that you could have when you see the singularity. And so I first started reading this in A Course in Miracles many years ago, where it talked about the one thing, that there's only one thing going on. And that's, in a sense, what the singularity is, to have this awareness where you see everything through this view. And so in my language, I use evolution to look at the world, to look at our species, to look at what's happening in the eyes of this singularity, this one thing, or evolution. Everything is moving forward in a very good way. It just sometimes doesn't look so good. And the important thing, and we'll spend some time, those that hang in here through the 4 classes, some time to do some personal reflection and maybe some exercises that have to do with looking at your life. You know, it's usually easier to do as we get older, looking back, but translating all of the events of your life into this singularity. That's the evolution of you. So if you can do it at the personal level, then you can do it at the global level. Sometimes people can do it at the global level first, and then they can translate that to the personal level. But it's imperative for us, those interested in conscious living, to be able to do this, where we no longer carry any karmic burden. We have no regrets. We have no misunderstandings. We have no grievances. Like there's nobody or no thing that we've ever experienced, encountered, that we would hold any longer as a prisoner of our egoic minds. You know, that we've denied and projected our divinity or our darkness, you know, onto some other person or some event. We've been able to do this simple translation that I described, or Hawkins describes, as the singularity. So one of the things I wanted to mention, just kind of going back to look at this sort of unstoppable evolution, I was really quite amazed in 1978, M. Scott Peck, a medical doctor, I'm sure you've heard of his book called The Road Less Traveled. This book came out, and at the time, for a mainstream book, it was mind-boggling. It was remarkable. I mean, the way he talked about spirituality, the way he talked about love, the way he talked about so many things was really remarkable. But what was more remarkable is that that book stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 13 years. It was the most popular self-help book ever published. I mean, he published way more than Marianne Williamson or any of the others that would follow. It's just after him, there were many, many more. His book being so popular opened the floodgates. And so now many authors that had spiritual ideas and all that could find a publisher, because I'm sure at the time, most publishers were like, yeah, this stuff won't sell. Well, they were wrong about The Road Less Traveled. You know, it was really interesting because I was so drawn to M. Scott Peck because of that book that he did some community building workshops, and I went to one of these things once. So, and I made the point to get in the circle and sit right next to him. I just wanted to be in his vibration. Well, it turns out he was a really messed up human being. He was self-admittedly, he was a very bad alcoholic and smoked cigarettes like crazy. So he didn't smell very good. And probably after lunch, he wasn't even able to be very coherent. But it just kind of amazed me. And this is what helped me realize in my life that these messengers don't necessarily have to be great human beings. They just were in the right place at the right time. And he delivered this material that was really part of our transformation as a culture, as a species. I mean, and he was just a regular guy with regular problems. And, you could look at many of the different teachers and, most all of them have that same, if you think they're holier than you, you're wrong. And fortunately, most of the teachers I've really been impressed with have been very open to prove me wrong. That Choim Trungpa or whatever, for instance, he was the one that Naropa Institute developed around him in Colorado a number of years ago. And he was a very bad guy, but he was an amazing teacher. His book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, is one of the very greatest books I've ever read. Like I said, David Hawkins, he was a character. I don't know if he wasn't probably as much of a troublemaker as Trungpa was, but most of these people are not very their ability to deliver the message was their contribution, their willingness to do that. And so it's really important that we, as we go deeper into this study of conscious living, that we are able to apply this same level of forgiveness to ourselves as well as others who have done their best to help move along our evolution as a species. And the ones that usually are the greatest game changers are usually some of the darkest human beings that I remember in the 20th century doing a lot of thinking about individuals. During my lifetime, I remember when Saddam Hussein was particularly hated. And I remember just at the time applying the lessons of A Course in Miracles and realizing, wow, I mean, these people that are really acting so badly, I mean, isn't it obvious that they're crying out for love, right? That any action is either an expression of love or a call for love. And that was kind of what Marianne Williamson's theme was in A Return to Love, was to see that call for love and recognize that, wow, why would I want to hurt this person more? This person's already so damaged. Why wouldn't I want to show whatever level of love and acceptance or appreciation that I can for this individual? And for example, it would be very lovely or easy to see first that there's clearly the number one hated person in the world right now is Donald Trump. And wouldn't it be amazing to be able to find some light, some ability to see him and his call for love, and maybe even see his contribution to our cocooning, to our evolution? That again, like Eckhart Tolle said in The Power of Now, the thing that we think of as evil is something we simply just don't yet understand. That we're not able to fully accept it, to appreciate it, to integrate it as something actually good, right? Good and useful. And that was an expression, I think, that came from A Course in Miracles, useful, that, sort of the usefulness of an event in your life, and how was that event in your life something that would help set you free. And again, I'll encourage you as we go along to reflect on your life and look at individuals, whether it's an ex-spouse or a parent or somebody that had clearly challenging role in our lives. And again, that's why I'm saying it was easy for me eventually to be able to translate all of this to a global level, because I completed it at the personal level. I was able to completely forgive, and I'll go into this more deeply, later when we look at the sort of the 5 levels of forgiveness. But to really deeply forgive someone that you hated so much. I mean, one of the greatest lines from A Course in Miracles is the holiest of all places on earth is where a special hatred turns into a present love. And I hated my dad for 55 years, and I was able to stand in front of him just before he died and have this remarkable experience that I never could have orchestrated. And but it happened. Able to see him through eyes that had nothing but love left, because all of the hatred was gone. It got washed away. So that's again what we're doing now. We're seeing it in the world. This hatred is coming to the surface, so that it can be washed away, and we will return to love. I mean, people probably right now, they say, boy, I just can't see a spiritual solution to the problem of the world. Well, I guarantee you there's only one solution to the problem of the world, and that is a spiritual solution. So this idea that we're evolving into the spiritual mind, and this spiritual mind will be so radically different than anything we know. So the difficulty is, and we'll talk about this more, I think it's probably in the next class, sort of the nitty gritty of what it would look like to step into a new earth. And a lot of people still in their egoic or tribal mind, they go, well, that's terrible. That doesn't look like a good thing at all. I'd have to give up, la, 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 la. These certain things we've taken for granted that, oh, these are the benefits of, living in a materialistic culture, for example, having money, having cars, having whatever, having property. And I mean, I think it's really kind of cute, because one of the things that we're seeing, which to me is very, very delightful, is we're seeing some of these individuals who are just, I mean, it's sort of unthinkable how much money now someone like Jeff Bezos has. I mean, it's like, 200 billion, or, I mean, he's going to be a trillionaire soon, right? They'll say, it's like, it'll be kind of fun for them to go, hey, remember when we just got in from the millionaire club into the billionaire club, and now we're going to be in the trillionaire club? And it's like, it becomes actually absurd. If I look around me and go, like, what would I do with $1 trillion or $1 billion, or even $1 million? It's like, I have no use for probably more than $5,000. I can't even imagine what anybody would do with that, how that would improve the quality of their life. And again, this is something that I want to explore with each of you to, think about. And hopefully as we get older, it's easier to see that, yeah, the extra money, that never really did help. It actually kind of caused some problems or made life more complicated or whatever. So this is, again, my idea as we look toward a future class, that we would say, okay, in a new earth, how would things be? Remember, Lynn, back in 1999, when we were developing this idea of conscious living and a group, and we used John Lennon's song Imagine as like our theme song. So let's maybe take a minute just to remember the words of Imagine. So this is now what probably a lot of people could today go, I could imagine a world without government. I could imagine a world without church. I could imagine a world without private ownership of property. I could imagine a world without money. I mean, these are the things that, like, the what do you call it, the New World Order, this is what the New World Order wants to create. Well, maybe the New World Order and our conscious, maybe those are two faces of the exact same thing. One looks pretty horrible because it's all about control and, they want to do it by their rules. But what if they, all of them, what if they were working as diligently, even if they're not conscious of it, for the higher good of everyone, for the higher good of our species? Wouldn't it be amazing if Bill Gates actually was an angel, not this devil that people make him out? And his motivations may not look very angelic at all, but imagine the results of what he wants to do with the vaccines, or what he wants to do with everybody being chipped and all that. So it's kind of like, we're getting a little overview into the spending more time in future classes, really investigating this idea. But the idea, which is, again, the foundation of conscious living, is understanding who we are, what we are, as we step into a new earth. That we are actually this energy body that's simply using the person, right? The person and the body is being used by the energy body as its communication device. This again comes out of A Course in Miracles. Your body, your person, is simply a communication device for, now you could say for God, but actually it's for your own higher self, your own spiritual mind, which is this conduit through which the greater the collective spiritual mind manifests. And so again, the spiritual mind has no problem with your body. The spiritual mind has no problem with your person. It simply asks that body and person to be useful. Remember, I said that from A Course in Miracles. Useful. How can I be useful? How can my body and my person be used by, and again, in religious language, people say, oh yes, I have this relationship with Jesus or God or whatever, and I want to, through my devotion, I'm going to be used by this Christian good for the higher good of all. It's just the same thing, just in a different language. Putting it in an energy language, which would say, hey, a Buddhist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, everybody should be able to understand the same thing, because all of the great teachers were talking about this energetic principle. It just got translated into mumbo jumbo that had to do with personalities and extant gods and all of that. But again, if like John Lennon's song is pointing toward no religion, because we're transforming beyond religion. No government, because we're transforming beyond the need for government. No more personal ownership of property, because we're transforming beyond the need. Who needs to have personal property? I mean, I live in this amazing eco resort place, this beautiful land, and hopefully some of you will come down and visit someday. I don't need to own it. I get to live here the rest of my days. Basically, it was bought and donated, all right, for us to use for the higher good of our little community. And this will be the way we operate as a species in the future. No one will own anything, but we'll all enjoy everything. We just can't think about it. You know, the egoic mind goes, well, wait a minute, there has to be, this is mine, that's yours. It's like, but we can imagine together, how would it be if there's no mine and yours? Here, my car. It's just like, there wouldn't even be that word. I mean, me, my, I, those are the primary words of the egoic mind. But imagine the spiritual mind will have a different language, just like the language won't refer to the person or the body any longer. It'll refer to, wow. It's kind of like, we use language more like, wow, oh yeah, ooh, we're not people anymore. We're not people talking about people. We're like energetic beings, just like I watch my little girl, 4.5 years old. The way she relates to the world around her is so beautiful, and all children are that way until they get that taken away from them, because the world starts enculturating them and having them define the world in bits and pieces. But you know, her world is still like superheroes and fantasy, and she can do anything, and it's all about power. It's all about this energy, which is like, she's great. And of course, I'll never say one word to her ever about her not being great, because her daddy's great, you know, and it's not great like I'm not a great human being, but greatness is me. I mean, greatness is using me for its expression. And so for her, I mean, her mother will never understand this. She thinks I'm a little cuckoo, but it doesn't matter. I mean, little Amelie, I mean, she's the representation of what this new earth is going to be, because it'll be normal for her to think this way, to feel this way. And, you know, again, we might think, oh, it's so special. Well, it's not special. It's the new normal. It's like I said, it'll take 5 or 10 years for the dust to settle. But for those that have eyes to see now, what's happening now, it's here now. It's like, it exists in this world now. There's not one problem in this world that I believe exists that's more powerful or more troubling or whatever. I mean, to me, this stuff that we're talking about, this is power. This is, you know, when Hawkins did this thing, it's like, you know, 100 isn't 5 times greater than 20. 100 is like 50 times greater than 20. And like 400 is like 1,000 times greater than 100. And like 800, this is like where I choose to live in enthusiasm. It's like 10,000 times more powerful. So imagine a few million people radiating at 800, where we have nothing but enthusiasm for what is. It's like, it's an unstoppable force. It's so much more powerful than money or military or these other mechanisms that seem to be powerful. They're not really powerful at all. You know, and you look at some of the people that have been very happy to sacrifice their body, their person, to show, listen, this doesn't change me at all. And And now, stuff that Jesus talked about as a true master, now we're getting to the point where we can collectively understand what he was saying. His disciples, there's that great line that says, Jesus says to his disciples, there is so much that I want to tell you, but you could not bear to hear it. You could not bear to hear the radiant truth of who you are. So you're going to believe the radiant truth of who I am, but you think you're still just like a dog. And so you think I'm like this being way beyond the human, which was actually true at that time. But in 2,000 plus years, guess what? There's enough of us that can radiate it at the same exact frequency as Jesus Christ, and we're not going to be special. We're not going to be made into something we're not. Collective, and Jesus said that. He said, there's so much more that you will do. He's talking to us in the future. And in Course in Miracles, it's very beautifully laid out. He makes that translation from the historical context of what he was saying to the modern context. When this was coming through, like I said, 1965 to 72, people said, like, this is amazing. This this one lady from Britain, she said, it's a celestial speed up. Like we were starting to see something that was always true, but it took time, right? It took time. But this is, again, the thing that Lynn and I talked about when we were getting started, that, I really believe that the Mayans were onto something. This whole idea that each era was 20 times shorter than the era before, because things were accelerating. So we were part of a 20-fold acceleration. And in the last year or so, and then the first year or so, as we came out of the 2012 time wave zero, there is this, we're still in it. We're still in an acceleration that is like this. What'll happen this decade will be more than's happened in the past 5,000 years, right? It's like every piece of time. Now, eventually I think things will dilate again and everything is going to calm down, but we are right in the middle. It's like we went through the eye of the storm, right? And remember 2001, for me, 2001 was like a game changer. It's like, what? When I watched the second plane go into the trade center, it's like, what? It was like the end of the world as I knew it, because inside I knew, wow, it's time now. It's time to get going. It's time to get ready. So I spent the next 10 years preparing for 2012. Now it's like, okay, now ground wave zero, here we are. Now we're beginning the new. How do we jump on the new? How do you ride it? How do you align your life with this new energetic principle that's manifesting? It just began in 2012. We're only 9 years into it, or 8 years into it. It's brand new. And that's why it looks so crazy, because it's so new, the world can't understand it. They see darkness. They see Trump. They see Bill Gates. They see Putin. They see all of these elements that they don't understand yet. And they think, well, there's like going to be a big nuclear war. Or there's going to be a big pandemic. Or there's going to be a big, well, yes. I mean, according to this woman, I think Lynn saw this, I forget her name now, Celeste. She said there's going to be these things happening in the next number of years that Christians they'll interpret it as the seven, whatever, the apocalypse. Because like this thing has just happened is actually pretty small as compared to what's coming. But what's coming is just another wave of the same energetic principle that's asking us to transform. People are worried about 5G, for example. I've talked with people a lot about getting their energetic frequency to a point where these things can't hurt you. It's only going to hurt you if you're really identified with the body, because 5G, all this electromagnetic thing, isn't good for the body. Okay, so if you're a body and if you're afraid of all this electromagnetic energy, guess what? You're going to get sick. You're going to get cancer. You're going to be dead. Okay, so all of us are going to drop our bodies. But in the meantime, as we're going through this energetic thing, because what's happening is the world is going to become so much more intensified. There was talk about the solar flares that were going to be happening, right? The former friend of mine in Cuenca, she was talking about this event that was really electromagnetic. It was happening because we're passing through the galactic center and this and that. And the point being, whether it comes from man-made sources or galactic sources, energy is amping up. Energy is going to increase steadily, And so if you can increase your energy system to ride that wave of energy, woohoo, it's going to be fun. And if it seems scary to you, then maybe you're going to get sick and die or whatever. But the main thing I would try to say to anybody is don't be afraid of any of it. Don't be afraid of the forced vaccinations. No, you can choose. No, I'll choose no. I mean, here I'm in Ecuador. They're not going to come after me. They're not going to find me. They're not going to force me to get a vaccine. But I understand that 90% of the world that lives in the tribal body, they want the vaccine. They want the vaccine because they want the body to stay safe, even if it means they've been chipped, even if it means now they're being controlled by things, because I'm sure most of you are familiar with the different things that could be coming along in the not too distant future. But that's only the people that are willing to be enslaved. They want to be enslaved because guess what? It's a comfortable existence. No stress, nothing to fight about. So, the tribal people, they're going to line up. Yeah, chip me. Yeah, do it. I want to be. So, and we'll get into this more in the next class because that'll be pretty much the focus of. We're already talking about it, but what are your choices? What would be the consequences of your choices? How do you choose to live? To say the next 10 years, because the next 10 years I think will be very telling, and hopefully some of us will have 20 or 30 or who knows how many more years on the planet. But the key to me is how during this time of transformation, how during this cyclone, how do we stay you can create your own eye of the storm, right? Where you're in it, but you're not feeling the effects of it because you found that eye of the storm within your own center, right? Lynn, we talked about before, we'll get into some of the practices later, but stillness, okay? Creating stillness. You can create stillness within yourself and you can be in the eye of the storm wherever you are. I mean, I practiced in my second marriage because there was a storm around me all the time. And I got really good at practicing stillness because I didn't want to be emotionally and sometimes physically battered. So it's like whatever is going to help us learn, like I said before, we want to be able to look at these events and these individuals who are answering our prayers to help us learn, and so sometimes, like I would say in my second marriage, okay, I was learning this deep spiritual practice, but there's still a time to get out. Now, a person could be learning this spiritual practice, living in the United States of America, for instance, and if it came down to the choice between getting vaccinated, going to prison, or leaving the country, maybe you leave the country. Who knows? I'm just saying that the world will give us these opportunities in these coming years to make a very clear choice. And again, to me, the clear choice is this. Do you want to be living in the tribal mind, the egoic mind, or the spiritual mind? If you're living in the tribal mind, you're actually going to be like, oh, it's not so bad. I don't mind going to prison, or I don't mind getting chipped, or I don't mind whatever. I don't mind being enslaved. The egoic mind, if a person stays in the egoic mind, I think that's the extinction choice, because I do think that the egoic people, they can't shift one way or the other. The powers that be will find them too troublesome, and they'll take them out. So, but again, the point is, because the egoic mind caused all of the world's problems, we want to either go back into the tribal and stay safe, be little sheep, or we want to move into the spiritual mind, be part of a new earth, and create something new, something dynamically amazing. It's like I always thought, I would have loved being a pioneer 300-400 years ago and pioneering someplace in the west of North America. But we're getting to do the same thing today. We're getting to be pioneers. It's like everybody is being given an opportunity to make this choice. And to me, it's a pretty simple choice if it's prison or freedom. It's kind of like that. The freedom would mean, walking away from the mechanisms of the old world, which means money. And because a lot of people say, oh, I can't leave my family, or I can't leave my business, or I can't leave my investments, or I can't leave. And that's going to be the tough thing, because most people have to make those choices. And luckily today, because of our technology, leaving isn't quite the way it would have been 50 years ago. I mean, I talk to my mom every week. I'll talk to her later on Skype. It's like our global family that we will increasingly become a part of. That global family is going to be as important, if not more important, than our biological clan. I mean, always there'll be a connection, particularly with parents and their children. But no one's going to ask you to break those connections. It just means you may be living a slightly different reality than they're living. But what parents don't live in a different reality than their kids anyway? I mean, for the most part. I mean, you know, we're seeing this evolution happening, you know, that we've seen just at a slower rate. I mean, if you think back to your great grandparents, I mean, do you realize how little, if anything, you have in common with them? Almost nothing. I mean, they lived in a remarkably different world. They wouldn't understand much of anything about our world. It's easier for us to understand their world because we have history. We can look back at how they lived. But you know, whether we like it or not, evolution is rapidly changing the world in which we live. And it's rapidly changing us. I mean, again, I look at pictures of my ancestors. You go back a few hundred years, these are not happy people. I mean, it was a hard life. You know, they were not like, ooh, wow, magic, ooh. It's just like that energy that many of us know that we would call happiness or enthusiasm. I mean, there were some rare individuals that were touched by that, but most people didn't have access to education or creative support. You know, you had people like Da Vinci. He was a creative genius, but he only had a good life because he had support, right? He was an outcast, as many incredible geniuses are. But you know, back in those days, if you were crazy, you usually end up in an asylum. You didn't end up getting the royal support that Da Vinci did to do the amazing things he was doing. So again, like I was saying, the world has changed to the point now where any of us can harness this same creative mastery, this creative genius, and we can have an amazing life, an amazing experience. It's a simple choice that at least those of us that have access to the technology here, you know, it used to be everything was in books, you know, now it's not so much in books, but it's the information is still available. We can still connect, and we're learning from each other. I mean, it used to be, I remember until I was 40, I read a lot, and then I realized, well, there's nothing else to read. Now it's a matter of doing it. Now it's a matter of, you know, for me, writing books and just being about this expression and enjoying that process. You know, so we take what we need, integrate what we need to get to a point. But then there's that point. This is again what I want to explore in our future classes is what does it take when you get to that point? There's like a door. What does it mean if I step through that door? What does it mean if I truly step into my magnificence? And you know, like, again, how do I deal with it? And how do I get the guidance and support from others around me to be able to do that without feeling like an outcast or without being castigated by society around us? Because it's still not immensely popular. The things that I'm talking about today, I mean, the average mainstream person is going to say, this guy's just totally whacked. He's totally crazy. Right? They don't want to believe this. They don't want to believe that this is good, that Gates and Trump and all of them are angels working for the higher good, even if it seems like they're demons. Again, it's I don't know if most of you are familiar with the Luciferic principle, but I've seen it in different forms or another, you know, in stories like Faust and all that. But the Luciferic principle basically says, kind of like Eckhart Tolle said about evil before, that the Luciferic principle is that which appears evil, but that which is designed to be the way shower to bring you to the light. So if you see the Luciferic principle manifesting in your life in a certain way, what you want to do is go, wow, thank you. You want to welcome it. You want to, like Eckhart Tolle said in New Earth, you want to accept it. You want to appreciate it. And if you can, you want to have enthusiasm for what it's going to drag you through. So again, we're seeing the Luciferic principle manifesting big time in the world, especially in North America. And it doesn't mean, it doesn't have anything to do with like how you vote. For example, I mean, it's like people say, well, gosh, if Trump's so great, you have to elect him again. It's like, he doesn't have to be elected again. This principle is playing its hand, and it doesn't matter what any of the individual players do. It doesn't matter whether Trump is president again or Biden's president. I guarantee you that Gates and Soros and the other players that are doing the New World Order stuff, this is not going to change their plan one iota. You know, people say, has Trump helped them or hurt them? Help them because he's not really a player, you know, with them. He's kind of doing his own thing. But who knows? I mean, I'll be fascinated to see if what Gates in particular, if what he's up to has, you know, if there's going to be any radical shift in his program, because they've been very patient. What's the word? Eugenicists. They've been at it for a long time. They have a very keen ambition to reduce the population of the world significantly. Now, would you say, hey, evolution would do that. Evolution has wiped out species before. So whether it seems that it's humans doing it or evolution is doing it is insignificant. I call it all evolution. If evolution inspires certain individuals like Bill Gates to want to, because they feel that, well, the more intelligent, morally superior humans should run the world and the rest of the people should be exterminated or enslaved. It's like, well, that's actually not out of alignment with evolutionary principles. It's just we don't like how that looks because it's like, wow, these individuals are playing God. Well, remember, God, whatever, all those terms, all of those ideas are being transformed if we're open to this conscious living idea that this creative intelligence is inspiring everybody to do what they're doing. Everybody's making their contribution. So these people that appear evil, George Soros or Gates or Trump, whatever, it's like they can't not be part of the same principle. They can't, there's no like exclusions to spiritual law. So again, it takes work to interpret. It takes work to try to get your head around, really, is possible that everything without exception is working for our highest good? And I would say that's spiritual law. So again, this is why again, I say we need each other. We need to be in relationship with each other to be able to go, well, I want to believe that, but it's just a little difficult. Okay, well, we're together. We're in this together. So I'm not going to consider you a wacko. If a person said, well, I can believe this much, but not all, it's like, well, that's okay. It's like you're taking baby steps. And it's like, there's people that are far along in this process, people that are taking baby steps. It's just like, imagine a bunch of us in school. You don't look at the people in kindergarten and go, oh, too bad, you little losers, you're just in kindergarten. It's just like, hey, we're in graduate school and we're helping those along that are on the same path. We're all part of the same species, right? That's evolving this spiritual mind. And so it behooves, it's just really the nature of the spiritual mind, because the spiritual mind is not competitive. It's not the egoic mind. It doesn't judge less or greater. It's like, if you're part of it, like for instance, this is one of the key representations of this principle at work. You guys showed up today so I could do this thing that I'm doing. It's like, holy shit, I've been waiting about 8 months to do this again because I love this process. Lynn knows. I love to talk. I love to just let it flow. I love to just, because, again, I have no particular script. It's just energy that wants to be expressed. And I've missed this a lot. So it's like, I would say to you right now, wow, namaste, thank you, because you gave me this gift, right? It's like, this is, again, one of the key principles about forgiveness, and I'll kind of jump ahead, but there's these stages you get to, but the essence of forgiveness is recognizing that the world exists so that you can give. right? The world is the place into which you give. The world has nothing that you want. There's nothing that the world should give you. The key to this whole thing, the key to enlightenment, the key to your enthusiasm and your happiness is recognizing that the only thing that's important is that you each day have the ability, the opportunity to express your highest expression, your highest manifestation of spiritual truth and love and beauty. And those that allow you to do that, those that say, okay, I'll listen to you for an hour and a half. It's like, whoo, thank you. Because I can't do it here. I can't do it in front of my wife's family. I mean, they can't understand me at all. Can you imagine these Ecuadorian people? They're so cute, and they just don't understand one thing about me, because their minds can't yet fathom. But even for them to see it, I mean, again, it's so delightful for me to watch my little daughter, because she gets immersed. She's spending the day today, and she spends a lot of time with her Ecuadorian cousins and all that. And she's remarkable. I mean, she's so different from them. I'm sure they look at her like, wow, she's so like happy. She's easily bilingual, which most of them are not. It's not as big a thing here in this culture to become bilingual. Because again, that's kind of the way they think. Like, why do I need English? It's everybody here is Spanish. It's like because all they care about is their immediate family, right? Their community. They don't have this ideal. Well, someday I might want to go live in another country or study at a university. This is what I say about the eagle and the condor. It's not about me judging them. It's like, wow, they're giving me something that I lost. Because of my journey, I had to lose, but I lost all the rest of them. I lost my wives and stepkids. I lost pretty much every friend that I ever had in the United States, except for Lynn and Robin. It's like all of that. Eventually I lost my country. I lost all these things. Now I was willing to lose those things in order to keep stepping forward, but it's not easy. And you can understand why people get stuck along the way. They're conflicted because, well, yes, I want to step into this magnificence, but it might mean alienating some of my friends. Some of my friends might go, ooh, you're crazy. Well, guess what? They weren't really, they're not really your friends in the sense of who you want to be evolving with. You want to be evolving with those that will go like, yeah, you go, girl, or hey, John. There's a few of us guys doing this. So it's like you want to find some true friends, spiritual friends, that will say yes to every little bit of your exploration and emancipation. And I think I've talked enough. My throat's getting a little sore. So maybe Lynn, you've got some things to say or introduce.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to open this up too, and it's so refreshing, Louis, just to see this enthusiasm you have, because I must say that lately I've kind of been in a whirlwind and looking at, are we headed for doomsday, or is this, how is this all going to play out? And I think you're right that it is our choice. We have a choice on how we look at it. And many of the friends that I know on this call that are here today are ones that I can count on to not judge and to understand where I'm coming from and my emotions, and have that common bond. So if anybody, you covered a lot of information, and you went from Carolyn Mace, Eckhart Tolle, David Hawkins, Marianne Williamson, M. Scott Peck, Jesus, and I think, and putting it in with the Louis Bourgeois integration. So it's great the way you can synthesize all these great pieces of work into bringing it into the consciousness of what we're going through today. So it's wonderful. So if anybody would like to share, it'd be great to even hear for some of you where you're from. And if you have a comment or something expansive that was expansive for you, or a different perspective, you know, we will go further into some of these principles later on. So today we just kind of wanted to get this overview and what these main principles are about. And but would love to open it up, and I think you can just have to unmute yourself to be able to share anything you'd like. I also did put a optional donation link to PayPal that goes into my account that I will forward. Everything will be going to Louis and to his center, and he's really creating a wonderful space there for people to be able to gather and to practice some of these teachings, whether it's for a night or a week or long term, but he can talk about that in future classes as well. Thank you. Thank you, Kat, for coming on. And did you want to say anything, Kat, before you have to leave? Kat Johnson, I know you have to.
Yeah, I was trying to get back to the screen. Just thanks to you both. This was fabulous. I'm so glad that my schedule was able to rearrange itself so that I could be here. It was what it was meant to be.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We'll be in touch. Anyone
I just
else?
wanted to say thank you too. It was a great, it was sort of like a history of so many beautiful things and so many beautiful reminders of how we came to be where we are today. And two statements that I loved, of course, were love is all we need, from, of course, the Beatles song, but also that evolution is moving forward in a very good way. For me, that was so beautiful to hear. I think with so much fear around us, floating around in the unconscious collective, that keeping this as part of my inner truth, knowing that evolution is moving forward in a very good way, is perfect for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Yes.
Hi, everybody. God, I am so glad to have been part of this. I am contacting you from Northern Ireland, so
Wonderful.
it doesn't get more tribal than this, which is why I really related to much of my experience when I lived in Cuenca. So I'm back here 2 years after having lived in the States for 30 years and then South America, etc. But you talk about, you know, the shame and the humiliation and those markers of a tribal culture. And it's remarkable. First of all, I resonated with everything you said, Louis, everything. And a lot of it, I'm familiar with the people that you quoted. I wouldn't have a deep intellectual understanding of much of the stuff, but I know it. I know it in my bones. But it is remarkable how quickly the psychic musculature can revert back to its origins. And so for me, it's like I have plugged into the mains today. You know, it's like really haven't been, it's like I'm floating here without an umbilical cord. And it's very difficult. And I hadn't forgotten anything, but I needed this reminder today, and I look forward to more.
What is the state of things in Ireland right now? How is the world moving along?
Well, we live at two levels. We live at the tribal level very, very much, because but at the same time, there is the incursion of the egoic mind, very much, from being subjected, you know, and then talk about how everything is speeding up. You know, it's becoming westernized, Americanized, and with all the chaos that entails. So we've got our tribal chaos, and now we have that layer of other stuff as well. So it's interesting.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear how things move along as we move forward in this course. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to share any comments? Yeah, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Lynn, one thing that I would mention to,
Oop, you're froze up. I can't hear you, Louis.
no, you have me or no? You hear
Okay,
me?
now you're here. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention to those, even if they've left or if people that wanted to be part of today's group, but for one reason or another couldn't make it, obviously they'll have a recording and they can, but I wanted to offer myself to anyone in the group that would like to have like a private chat sometime. You know, I get plenty of time on my hands always. To talk about this, you know, I don't work. Available and very interested to work with people if they feel more comfortable talking individually versus in the group about some personal things, or because that's a big part of the work is to be able to make that personal translation. Because if you can do it at the personal level, then and only then really are you able to do it at the global level. You know, it's just like our life is a microcosm of the greater life. And so often if you look, you know, like that, you know, sort of in our bones, in our intuition, we've always known these same things to be true. It's just a matter of that translation into a language or, but usually it's via our experience that we really learn the essence of forgiveness, which ultimately is what releases us. You know, so we'll talk about that more next time about the actual process when we get into the principles and practices of conscious living. It's like, you know, literally being able to bring that energy of forgiveness to our life circumstance, past or present, can allow us to become totally free. Because one of the deep things that I learned early on, I had a sense when I even was a teenager, but I had this inkling that this thing that I'm carrying, this sort of human karmic burden, that there is a way to become free. I just believed it because I'd read so many spiritual texts where people had actually talked about that process of emancipation from the trappings of the person, right? Just like you can become free of you know, physical ill health, energy body. Because again, what I would say is that, you know, we have this vibrational reality that is so powerful that it will inform and heal the mind, and it will inform and heal the body. It all sort of works as a result of saying yes to the spiritual energy, that it is unstoppable, just like evolution at the global scale is unstoppable, but also in us. So if you're holding anything that you think, man, I just don't know how to translate this, I don't know how to make this interpretation, feel free to have a chat with me. Because as Lynn knows, you know, I've got lots of stories about my little sister and her suicide, my father, the monster, you know, my ex-wife. It's like we have these teachers, these masters that have come into our life for that purpose of helping us find freedom. Because again, all of these individuals are part of the same thing. My dad wants to be free. My sister wants to be free. My ex-wife wants to be free. So we're all doing this together. We're helping each other, even if it appears that we're, you know, at odds with each other. That's why I'm saying what's going on in the world today, it's, even though it might be difficult to see it and to believe it, but to know that all of these agents are all actually working for the higher good of our species, even if they're hurting each other in the process. I mean, it's just,
Right.
again, that tends to be part of spiritual law. That, like you said before, that what Eckhart saying that, you know, evil or the appearance of evil is something that we just don't fully understand.
Right. Having times where I would see something as a problem, talking to Louis always was able to turn that problem into a solution, into some way that was helpful for me to be enthusiastic about. So you can tell with his enthusiastic energy body that he is sure to give you some exciting information. So there is never a problem. Anyone else want to share anything before we have to close here soon?
I will.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hi. I resonate with everything that you've said. I've been on my spiritual awakening path for 34 years. So I've read a lot of the same books, but I appreciate the way that you've been able to weave it all together cohesively. So it's really easy to understand. And I feel like I was made for this time. I haven't been afraid since this whole COVID thing started, except when we had the riots in Minneapolis. That brought up fear in me, but I went through a physical initiation over the last 4 years where I was facing my death 5 or 6 times. So I'm not afraid. I've been calm and peaceful throughout this because I know that this is happening for our highest and best. I believe that in the core of my being. And so, like you said, it's curious and interesting to watch it unfold because you can see where it's going if you really are looking at it from the spiritual perspective. So I thank you. I really appreciate what you said today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll jump in for just a moment. I'm from Washington State, Northwest U.S., and I've felt pretty calm. I have moments where, the spirit kind of gets a little weak. So it's wonderful to hear Louis and, the energy. And I think the one thing that jumped out at me, I apologize I was late because somehow or another, I didn't figure the time zone difference between Cuenca and here. So I'll get that straightened out the next time around, and I'll get with a recording to catch the first part of this. But I think the one thing that struck me in all of the wonderful things that you said, Louis, was the notion of being excited, enthusiasm. And that's, sometimes it's when we get into ourselves, it's easy to just be there and not exude that enthusiasm. And that's something I'm going to take with me from the many things that you shared that I agree with. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
Yeah, when you realize that enthusiasm is higher on the scale than joy. I mean, it's like a very high, powerful force to embrace. And who doesn't like to just be enthusiastic and laugh? And I think we all need more things right now in our life just to get enthusiastic about. So we'll find it. If we're seeking it, we will find it. Hey, Zane.
Hi, Lynn. I just wanted to say thank you so much. My life right now is fairly isolated. And so I try not to do a lot of mainstream news and that kind of thing. But I have been lacking in my connection with you and the group that we used to be together with. And this was so needed. I really appreciate it very, very much. Happy to be here. And thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good to see you. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Anyone else have anything else they want to share before we close out here?
And one thing I'll mention, John, reflecting on enthusiasm, is that one thing that I know from my experience is that, like I said, the the energy body affects the mental and the physical body. I know that when I live in enthusiasm, which is most of the time, my relationship like with sleep is much, much different. I mean, sometimes I sleep less because I'm filled with some creativity. I can't sleep. Sometimes I sleep more just because it's like I just realize, wow, what a delightful thing. I can just stay in bed all morning, whatever. But food, sleep, just the basic things of life change a lot because you think back to the time when we're driven by emotional, psychological needs. It's so relevant to how we sleep and how we eat and whatever. It's like, I really believe that, again, as we ramp up our energy body, that we'll have just a much easier relationship with all of these physical and emotional things. It doesn't mean like you make better choices or worse choices. It's like, it doesn't even matter. It's like, kind of like, why would people make a big deal about food or sleep or, health? Those things actually become like a secondary, normally easier. I would say even if a person had health issues, I think they would have an easier time with it. Like Caitlin, like you were saying about death. I mean, that's sort of the ultimate, that, of course, miracles, there is no death. I mean, literally, there is no death. Well, that makes sense now because as an energy body, absolutely, my energy body is eternal. I will not, when I drop my body, this being that I've become will not change. I'll be like, that was so cool. I just dropped the body and the person. It's like, and we can usually do this in stages where you become less and less the body, less and less the person, as you become more spiritually awake, because those are just simply things you're not as interested in identifying with, because this is so much more fun. I don't think very many people outside of maybe having an orgasm feel like being in the body is like really fun. Maybe sometimes when you pee or take a poop or something, I mean, it really feels good to be a body. But at this level, there's nothing but good. I mean, there's nothing but, it's like those things, even like, happiness, or you said joy, or, love, those things that seem to be somewhat human. At this level, the human stuff actually doesn't mean anything other than the fact that, hey, thank you, body. Thank you, Louis. Thank you for like going through what you went through as a body and a person to show up today, because I needed you to do this. I couldn't do the Zoom thing without a body or a person. But even that, someday we'll realize, hey, and I think it's part of our future evolution, that we will become these intuitive beings that don't need bodies any longer to communicate. We're getting better and better at it via technology. But I think there's been a lot of things talked about our evolution as a species that will become, remember like in the movie Avatar, we'll become like these beings of level that we humans used to need in order to feel joyful and fulfilled and all that. So, I'm excited about that because, I'll be in this body, who knows, 15, 20, 25 more years. But think about eternity. Because a lot of times at the egoic level, we think, well, after we drop our body and our person, there's no more existence. Well, that's literally not true. That we're always going to exist. And we will exist at a different level. But like I'm saying, the more we practice this level of the energy body, this level is very much like how we are in eternity. So it's like the translation as we drop our body won't be very significant. It won't be like a big surprise. People that are really in a dumbed down, I mean, they're going to be really surprised when they drop their body, because it's be like, whoo, if I only knew this was over here, why would I be so afraid of it? Most people, if they really knew what I know and they're in a body suffering, they would just like kill themselves because they want to just jump into this, and if some people have ideas that suicide would maybe damage your experience on the other side, who knows? But all I know is that as we evolve and get to that place where we're vibrating so close to eternity as it is, as we step into eternity, be like, oh, it was not a very big change at all. Oops, did I drop? Am I still here? Audio but not video, right? There we are. Anyway, okay. All right, you got to
Okay.
close things up, Lynn. We've got 10 minutes. We're done.
Yeah, but I figured we would just close. It's a long time to be in technology. And I think everyone here was able to speak. But if anybody has any last closing thoughts, I'll give one more opportunity for anyone to say anything. Otherwise, I think this is just a lot to digest. I took several pages of notes myself, even though I've heard a lot of this before. It's always, especially from hearing most of this, when we started, like Louis said, it was 9:09:09, and we basically worked from 12:12:12. So during that time frame, we had 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days of this portal that we went through in this conscious living. And here we are reunited at this time, and it's all perfect. I think there's another portal that we're going through here that is huge. It's basically, we're feeling like we're having a life review of our humanity, when in this time right now we're going through civil rights, we're going through climate and dust bowls, we're doing the Great Depression, we're doing riots, we're doing civil war, we're doing, all these things being condensed into this time frame to relive it and really look at what our consciousness has done and been through, and live it all within this short amount of time. There's kitties meeting kitties. So cute. That was the meowing I could hear in the background. So thank you all for joining us today. I will send out I can send the email again with the link. It might be the same link, but if any of you had to put in a password, the password might change. I don't know if anybody had to put in password. Yes? So they didn't have to put in? Okay, so maybe if you didn't need to do that, it should be the same link for 1 week from today at 10 a.m. So John, yep, it would just be 1 hour earlier. And I will also then send the email with the recording of this one, because I know there's several other people that wanted to hear the recording and couldn't be part of it today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much for making this happen.
And we'll be in touch. Have a wonderful
right.
week. Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.